Welcome back to ZMS Esports Studio, your home for all things virtual cycling and virtual racing. And of course today you are joined by me, your host Mark, as I take you through stage 3 of what's promising to be a very exciting race series called Chase the Yellow, brought to you by us here at ZMS Esports Studio. And where we are racing is, well, has been in fact, base camp for stage 1, which was on the 29th of August. On the 31st of August, we had stage 2 coastal loop, very aggressive climb on base camp, and coastal loop was that nice flat sprinter's paradise that we took on Thursday gone. But today, for September 5th, we have locked and loaded, and as you can maybe guess, from the Scottish sounding name of this course, there's a little bit of a sting in the metaphorical tale of this one. And let's take a closer look at stage 3. So if you look at that grey elevation profile in that top kind of bar-shaped window there, you can see the sting in the tail that I mentioned. Yes, with that Scottish sounding name, we do have an almost Highlandian climb ahead of us. But it is 2 laps making 25.1 kilometer total, and a cumulative climbing in only 25 kilometers is 621 meters. Oh, I do not envy the contestants, the contenders on course today. And so we're going through the center of Indy Velo's proprietary Velo Island today with the course. But before we jump on over to results from stage 2, how does the race work? Well, if this is your first time joining us, we have both a pro side of the race and a sportive side of the race. Sportive here is our fill-in name and kind of cycling sports world name to fill in for general classification, in other words, unranked. But we do also have pro, and riders who have a license, so a race license from either global, so UCI, national with organizations such as British Cycling in the UK, or provincial with the provinces like here in Canada, they can enter said race license into the game. But in doing so and choosing to race in the pro side of the race, they will have to abide by very strict dual recording disciplines. And that means that riders will be required to have power meters as well as a smart trainer. So in other words, 2 sources of power wattage numbers coming in and 2 sources of cadence data coming in to verify that the rider's numbers are correct, that there's no number skewing going on, along with a race day weigh-in that will verify that there's also no weight doping going on. So this is really like UCI level verification, stuff that would make you proud, really, if you are a fan of cycling and cycling as a sport. So now that we've taken a quick look at that, why don't we jump on over to the results from stage 2. So we're looking at the Pro GC, or general classification, in other words the cumulative from the stages so far, so stage 1 and 2. So the top 5 from the Pro is Igor Kopse taking the top position with 1 hour 19 minutes 1 second and 100th of a second cumulative from both stage 1 and 2. Tim Humpton is only 16 seconds behind with 1 hour 19 minutes and 17 seconds. Only 700th of a second behind Tim Humpton is Josh Harris with 1 hour, 19 minutes, 17 seconds, and just about 700th of a second there. Morten Fang is at 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 19 seconds, placing him 19 seconds behind Igor. And rounded out that top 5 is Ben Russell with 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 44 seconds, with a differential behind Igor of 43 seconds. But what about the sportive, or the general classification, or unranked if you will? Well, let's take a look. So usurping Rob Halsall after stage 2 is Ludwig Karlberg from Sweden with a cumulative time from stages 1 and 2 of 1 hour 22 minutes and 27 seconds. 3 seconds behind is Rob Halsall with a cumulative time of 1 hour 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Germany's Sven Dreze is sitting at the third place position with 1 hour, 23 minutes and 5 seconds. Barely a shave behind Sven Dreze is Aeonian's Ariala Verhaeren with 1 hour, 23 minutes and 18 seconds. And rounded out the top 5 from New Zealand is Josh Markham from Team NZ Bro with 1 hour, 23 minutes and 20 seconds. But what about the women's general classification? Let's take a look. So the very fierce Ariala Verhaeren is sitting at that top spot out of the top 5 that I'm just about to go through with 1 hour, 23 minutes and 18 seconds cumulative from stages 1 and 2. Fellow Aeonian teammate Daniela Estrada is sitting at 1 hour, 23 minutes and 21 seconds for a differential behind Ariala of 3 seconds. Vicky Whitelaw, another Aeonian, is at 1 hour, 32 minutes and 7 seconds for a differential behind Ariala of 8 minutes and 50 seconds. JL Wright, again Aeonian, so Aeonian are holding on fierce to that top 5 here. JL is sitting at 1 hour, 34 minutes and 37 seconds for a differential, again behind Ariala, of 11 minutes 19 seconds. Then we have Stephanie O, not an Aeonian, for a bit of a change here, with 1 hour, 38 minutes 32 seconds for a differential of 15 minutes and 14 seconds behind Ariala. So that's the results from stages 1 and 2. But how will today's race shake up the leaderboard? Well, we can find out by jumping over to the start line. Before we begin, I'm just quickly going to avert your eyes to what we're looking at here. On the left window, we have the pro race, which we just touched upon earlier. On the right window, we have the sportive, or the unranked or general class, if you will. And we are now off. And it looks like we have a bit of a lead out, a bit of a breakaway right off the bat on the pro side of the race. And just quickly, who is this? It's Tim Humpton, who we've got in the orange kit there, as he just passes the entrance arch to the course. So we're now officially out of the lead-in, and we are now in the course proper. Tim Humpton trying to hold on to that lead, but it looks like, I'm trying to remind myself of who's in the yellow there. Josh Harris has surged ahead. But I know that this is, my apologies, I know that this is a whole cluster of Rolliers that we have here on the pro side. And I mean, wow, do they ever prove it, especially with Igor, well, everybody really, as I just touched upon. They are really fierce at the climbing, so I think we're going to see a big bunch holding as the bunch and really putting in some fierce numbers as we get into the climb. We're straight into a downhill here out of the lead-in, and right away we begin the climb. So not too fierce right now, and certainly we can see Rasmus Feldball, and we all know that Denmark is a notoriously hilly country, especially when you get onto the island there, Copenhagen, and further north as well on Jutland. That yes, we are going to see a lot of fierce racing. And finally we get Igor Kopse on the webcam. Look at that, that is one toned warrior of the wheels. A UCI champion in Grand Fondo, or what is known in certain English-speaking countries such as the UK, Australia and New Zealand as sportive, as well as being known in France, of course, being a French word, as sportive, is where Igor gets his chops as a pro rider. We have Carl Axel Zander Persson on webcam as well from Sweden. And again, just with those bib shorts, because he's putting so much ferocity through those crank arms that he needs his body to breathe that much. Tim Hunter once again on the lead. And again, I believe as we get through this climb, we're going to see a lot of jockeying and jostling, as they all seem to be fairly evenly matched Rolliers. It looks like Rasmus has fallen behind a bit. Maybe I spoke too soon. Maybe Rasmus is from the relative flat of Copenhagen. But Tim Humpton is one of 3 teammates on Electric Spirit Co, and he is complemented by Thomas Bayan and by Matt James, both of whom are also here on course today. But we've taken a look at our FIAS Rolliers. How are we getting on in Sportive? And we have very much a leader right now, Kester Dobson with SDW Racing, and quite a bit of a breakaway here, holding some pretty good power and fairly good cadence for such a fierce climb. Right here at the front, seeming like, if my eyes can really judge the virtual draw distance at all, in the real world, probably about a 50-meter distance here above the peloton behind, but somebody is surging ahead there, and that is Daniel Kehrer. Looking to bridge that gap. We've also got Sven Tedesser, who's right up there in the top 5, as we just saw after both stages 1 and 2. Daniel Kehrer is also putting in a really fierce effort here, over that 350, or sitting around 350 watts. A fairly good cadence as well, so it looks like everybody has studied their elevation profile, which if you watched yesterday's race that I actually participated in, I did not do as I went into it, and misjudged of when I should shift down into the small chain ring, and I misjudged it severely, cooked my quads, cooked my effort, turned the lactic acid hard, and I fell right behind. Anyway, it looks like that is not the case for everyone on course today. They have done their due diligence, studied their elevation profile for the course ahead, and they're putting in some solid effort. And I'm surprised actually that we're not already seeing the stringing out of the peloton, as we have, just by the nature of the different ability of riders, so those different abilities being rollier, climber, sprinter. So rollier is a very French way of saying the all-rounder, the person who is the all-rounder but maybe the jack of all trades and the master of none, who can certainly put in some ferocity on the climbs, but also give a bit of a punch to the sprints as well. But the sprinter is the one who might suffer on the climbs. But I'm surprised to see that peloton holding together so well on the Sportive side, and I guess I should congratulate you all for being able to hold that together so well for so long. But it looks like we are seeing that crest come up, and it can certainly be the descent that can shake things up a little bit, much to the surprise of everybody. But it is obviously in-game, being as we're based in real-world physics. The rider weight will come into play with gravitational forces, and how confident any given rider is with either pedaling through a downhill. Bearing in mind that we do have real-world fill for the Smart Trainer on today, so you can be spun out like in the real world if you do not shift into a high enough, or visually speaking, a small enough looking gear in the big chain ring. So it comes down to confidence as well. I certainly find downhills in the real world very scary, and I don't find any shame in that. I find that I ride the brakes all the way down. I'm surprised I haven't had to have many more brake pads than I have replaced. But then again, I do live in the relative flat of Saskatchewan in Canada, where there are jokes such as, you let your dog run away and you'll see it run away for the next 5 days. So let's take a quick look. If I can get my words out here, let's take a quick look at the pro side of the race. We can see that Morten Feng is pushing ahead here with Razio Racing. Igor Kopse, who's bringing a lot of ferocity to those crank arms, bringing a lot of heat through the chain with friction alone, I would assume, is right on the heels there, along with Tim Humpton. And it looks like, I'm not sure if Igor Kopse's webcam is frozen or if he's just holding form really well, but hopefully we'll see more from Igor as we get deeper into today's race. Thomas Bayan is taking us by surprise by taking the lead here, but we are following Carl Axel Zander Persen, such a very fierce rider who rides often in higher tension gears, again visually, to put that visually speaking, the smaller looking cogs on the cassette in the big chainring, normally very fierce at pulling through that chain tension. So I'm surprised to see that he's fallen off the back here. I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a technical involved. Either way, Carl, having raced with him on other virtual cycling platforms, I know is very fierce at chasing the tail of a peloton, and I'm sure he won't have any trouble in chasing that lead group. And we've got Rasmus Felbauer here, who has fallen off again, but I'm hoping we haven't seen, again, my apologies, I'm hoping we haven't seen the last of his big attacks, big surges yet, because Rasmus is very much the underdog in races I've seen him in, and he can very much live up to the promise of an underdog with some very phenomenal wins, or at least be in a very fantastic position in the top 5 from having surged from behind. Now, in the Sportive side, it looks like Bjorn Ozenbrink is right up there at the front. We also have Daniela Estrata from Aeonian, who we're watching right now for Romania, who is getting right onto this lead group. And to remind you who Aeonian are, they are the women's team here, and complementing Daniela Estrata is Vicky Whitelaw, Arielle Verhaarden, Andrea Heinrich, Jamie Lee Wright, Debbie Wimblett, Jennifer Mizak, Berian Driscoll. Oh, no, wait, Berdine Driscoll. Let's remember my IE pronunciation in German there. So we are currently looking at the power numbers for Arielle Verhaarden, right in this attack group, lead group here. And as I said, we would see that the descent might cause a bit of a shake-up to that peloton. We saw that very huge peloton before, and now we very much have a lead group and chase groups now. And as you can see, I wasn't really wrong in my assessment there. In fact, I've kind of been vindicated in my assessment that it depends on who is able to gun through a downhill, if they're brave enough to do so. If their chain isn't too slack at that point. And it does depend on calculations of physics done by the game as well, based on real world physics. And all of that's come to play to break us up into an attack group and a chase group. But we've got Tony Lake here, who's looking to chase the attack group, the main group, and latch on. And he's doing a phenomenal job right now. I wonder if we can see his power numbers, see what he's doing in his chase here. Here we go. So just shy of 200. He's kind of pacing his chase, which is good. In a nice fast cadence, so keeping the quads massaged. Good. And it looks like at a guess, he's in around about zone 3, maybe just touching into a zone 4 heart rate. Again, heart rates are very subjective, dependent on age and some other statistics such as height, those kind of things as well, as blood pressure with height can affect those kind of things. So it looks like Josh Harris has got a bit of a breakaway. This is anybody's game and anybody's guess on the pro side. There is so much jockeying and jostling, and with them all being Rolliers, and again, Rolliers will be at different levels, just like any of the 3 main ability groups of road racers. We will also see different levels of Rollier, and it keeps being anybody's guess. We keep seeing a different breakaway with a different distance of a lead every given time that we jump back to the pro side of the race. Josh is managing to hold fairly strong and fairly consistent right now, but if there's anything we've seen from Morten Feng and Igor Kopse is that they will very much be able to close that gap. And I very much feel like Igor is actually pacing right now. This was his bread and butter for a while, doing the UCI mandated Grand Fondos or Sportives, and he knows from real world experience of when to pace a climb and when to attack. Ergo, when not to cook your cardio effort and your quads and when to do so. But is Josh making a very clever decision by getting ahead on one of our longest climbs right here, so that in the descent he can maintain that lead? Or will we see a different dynamic come to play when again we enter those descents? We'll find out soon. Igor Kopse here, very much closing the gap with Morten Feng. Look at that on the webcam, we can see that sheer ferocity, the biting of the teeth. I love the dramatic appearance of that. That makes it so easy as a commentator. So Josh managing to hold a lead right now, but Morten Feng, cat and mouse with Igor Kopse. We're certainly going to see them duke it out as they get to the pinnacle here. I believe the main climb stage of this one particular, arguably mountain that we're going up, is denoted by, as ending by this checkered arch that we're about to pass. With Tim Hunton here, we can see that all of our pros are not going anywhere lower than 350 on their wattage in this climb. Holding that for so long is, I can certainly attest to, is not pleasant, so well done. I cannot tell you how much and how long I had to be out of the saddle yesterday. Yesterday's one, I believe we had 200 meters of climbing in only 10 kilometers, and it was all centered and almost vertical. Like it went up to, I believe we hit well over 15%, 17 I think. Victor Wilking here, or Vilking? I get so lost in whether I'm meant to be pronouncing certain names Germanic or English, but it looks like Matthew Ladd for Coalition just surged ahead there. Daniel Kehrer just behind Victor Wilking, who we were just following with both with BHC, in hot contention to put in some fierce effort as we get to the evening out of the climb here. And again, everyone has paced themselves really well. Everyone's studied their elevation profile, which again I will attest to, having learnt the hard way yesterday. Don't just go in nonchalantly if you actually want a race to win. Study the elevation profile. Know when you have to consider your shifting. The funny thing is, I actually know to do that and just didn't. So we're keeping together quite strong on this lead group, this breakaway group. Matthew Ladd is holding very consistent, but as is Sven Dreze and Daniel Kehrer, who are both hot on his rear wheel. But Josh Harris on the pro side of the race is very much holding that lead that he's managing to affirm, and he's managing to hold that breakaway very smoothly. So we're still not quite out the climb, but it's certainly evened off. As much as I can say armchair that is evened off when we're looking at 12%. And Morten Feng and Igor Kopse still duking this out as we round out to the what seems to be the true pinnacle here, which we can see that kind of, do you see that white notch going across the road on the aerial map view on the top right of your screen? That denotes the arch we're about to pass. That tells us that we have finished the climb proper, that we've reached the actual true zenith of the climb. Well, they're duking it out for that said zenith. Who's going to be able to punch the gas hard as we dip into the descent? So far Morten Feng is managing to hold Igor at bay, but for how long? Here we go. Igor has found his footing as we get into the relative flats. Are we going to see our riders attack the downhills, or are they going to rely on the forward momentum before we crest over the descent? Igor is certainly going with an attack. And we've got Morten Feng there, very hot on the rear wheel. Wow, this is fully dramatic, entirely enthralling. I love it. But how are we getting on the Sportive side? So not too far away from where we've just seen that Zenith. We have Matthew Ladd holding fairly strong on the front, but he is very much being contended by Daniel Kerder and Sven Dreze and Victor Wilking. I shouldn't dismiss Victor Wilkins' effort here. And it looks like about 15 seconds behind, 14 seconds behind Victor Wilking is Arielle Verhaeren. And she is in the chasse patate position, the potato chase position, which apparently is a term actually used in the Tour de France, describing that kind of no man's land when you're between groups is where Arielle seems to be right now. And I'm judging that, by the way, by looking at the chart of riders on the center far right of your screen and looking at the differential times. But it does look like quickly catching up on Arielle is Bjorn Ozenbrink, but we are just about to cross the zenith here, and Daniel and Matthew very much in fierce contention, but closing on the rear wheels is Sven Dreze and Victor. And who's going to punch the gas? Who's going to attack the downhill? It looks like Daniel Kerder's going for it. And here we have Arielle. Bjorn is closing in. So Arielle doing over 200 as we cross the threshold here, which I certainly don't blame the tapering off of that effort after such a long and fierce climb. The quads will be burning, the lactic acid will be harder than you want it to be right now, even in the small chain ring, as you've been dragging through that chain tension. But at least it feels nice when you get to sit back down in the saddle and you get to massage out those quads on the downhill. So Arielle putting in a fierce battle here with Bjorn. But teammate Daniela Estata is in aid there, helping out Arielle. And it looks like Josh is still maintaining a lead. So this is very interesting right now as we round into lap 2 almost. We're just about to crest into lap 2. You can see the arch coming up in a short distance there, just on your horizon. There we go. Now it's properly in view. But will Josh be able to hold this lead as we continue through lap 2 and get back into some very fierce climbs that are coming up? By the way, you can follow along with where we are on the elevation profile by looking at the bottom center of your screen. You can see the ghosted out kind of asphalt grey of that looks like mountains. That is genuinely our elevation profile. The gold downward facing arrowhead is who we are currently watching. So we're currently watching Igor, and that 1 denotes where we are leaving or ending lap 1. So Igor here and Morten Feng. So Igor, if you want to keep track, is in the Razio Racing kit, which is the black and almost like fire orange kit that you can see. The white kit is Morten Feng. So that is the Razio Racing kit. You want to follow anyone who's Razio Racing, look for that kit. So how many seconds are we off of Josh Harris? Josh Harris has opened up 38 seconds over Morten Feng and Igor Kopse, which is truly phenomenal. We're through gentle peaks and troughs here, but as you can see, friends, after this trough that we're going through now, we have a very fierce peak coming up, and that's not the worst yet. We have that final one, as you can see, in the final quarter of the course coming up. Beginning the foothills of the peak in the pro side of the race, coming through this little tiny peak before the big peak on the Sportive side. So Victor Wilking currently in the lead in the Sportive side of the race, but again a very hot contention in this breakaway peloton, or I guess I should say bunch or group, because it's not really sizable enough to, in my mind, be considered a peloton, but a nice little attack group nonetheless. Victor Wilking is at least holding half or a full bicycle length there, but will he be able to hold it into the climb? And this will be the staging ground for finding out if Victor Wilking is a climber, a roller, or a sprinter, as we get into yet another drawn-out climb just after everyone got to enjoy a really brief reprieve, a real brief breather from those quite grippy, pinchy, punchy climbs that we just endured. And to remind you of where we currently are, we are locked and loaded, which is on Indy Velo's proprietary Velo Island, and it cuts right through the middle of the island, much like how the South Island of New Zealand is, carving through the mountains that cut through the center of the island. And I guess we should also mention that there's a development that we would like to announce to you from Indy Velo. Have you heard of something called Keirin? You should have if you're a cycling fan, because it is a track discipline that has entered the Olympics, originated in Japan. But that is coming soon to Indy Velo, and we'll now take a look at that. So how does Keirin work? Well, I'll talk about how it works with Indy Velo in a second, but in the real world you would have a motorized motorbike with somebody who sets a starting pace and a finishing pace, normally around about 31 kilometers per hour on the track for Olympics, and normally ending at 50 kilometers an hour. You're not allowed to pass to begin with, and then it's for a set amount of time. I believe they go for something like 6 laps, so it's really short but very punchy. And the way that you can set this up in game is you can set your time however distance you want to go, so how many laps of the velodrome. So you do it in the forest velodrome here in Indy Velo. You can also set the weather, so you can even switch off the weather to make it feel like an indoor velodrome. You can set your lead out speed for the Keirin, who is the motorized vehicle that you follow, and the finishing speed as well. And this will be a tournament that will be coming called Chase the Pace, which is brought to you by us here at ZMS Esports Studio, but the Keirin development brought to you by the very intelligent folks at Indy Velo. So enjoy. Also, by looking up how Keirin works, because I've seen it before but didn't quite know how it works. When looking it up, I found out that the world champion in the Olympics by number of medals and titles held is actually Britain's Chris Hoy. I didn't expect that for something that was developed in Japan. So Josh Harris just dive bombing these downhills, and he's very much learned about the braking discipline in Indy Velo. So you just saw him round that corner by freewheeling, and that was a corner out of a downhill. Now if you try and attack a corner in Indy Velo by, on a flat or a descent I should add, by pedaling through it, because that would not be something that you would do in a road race or in any kind of environment where you've built up a lot of speed on a road bike in the real world, you will instead receive a braking discipline. And with the real world feel that you can switch on and off for races as a race organizer in Indy Velo, I can say as a testament from yesterday's race that was on, you feel it in your smart trainer. When you're on a smart trainer, it will actually seize up your chain tension. The magnetic flywheel, electronically controlled magnetic flywheel, will actually seize until you ease up, and it will brake for you, but more than you would have if you had freewheeled in. So you actually begin to lose speed and therefore perhaps bleed off a couple of vital hundredths of a second maybe, which is all important in the race, as a discipline for not following real world pedaling tactics. So a great way of teaching you how to do proper real world pedaling tactics, so you can actually even learn how to race in the real world through doing so on Indy Velo. That's another reason why we here at ZMS Esports Studio think it's a fantastic platform. Anyway, Josh Harris still holding that phenomenal lead, but in the sportive side of the race, Daniel Kerda is still fighting this out with Victor Wilkin, with Sven Dresa. It looks like Matthew Ladd there is falling off a little bit. Maybe he has cooked his goose, maybe he's pushed a little bit too hard as we went through that previous climb. However, as I say that, he is latching back on to the rear wheel of Victor Wilkin. And it looks like putting in a bit of an attack here as we get into the 8% of the climb, beginning to soften up a little bit as we get to the zenith here. Again, you can see and follow along with where we are on that elevation profile by looking at the bottom center of your screen. Now cresting that zenith, and now we're going to get the downhill descent. We're going to get that option to attack or to freewheel through it. And it looks like Matthew Ladd has very much made his decision to gun it through the descent, hoping for a chance to create a bit of a breakaway. But Daniel Kerda is trying to call his bluff here. Actually, Daniel Kerda is pacing it. I think he knows about the corner coming up here. Again, competent rider will study that elevation profile very intricately, as much as they'll study the course. There we go, and maybe avoiding that braking discipline is actually allowing Daniel Kerda, Victor Wilkin and Sven Dresa to catch up here and to put in a counter-attack, a counter-offensive as they gun through those crank arms. As they turn the teeth of the cogs on the cassettes into mere nubs. But Matthew Ladd holding very strong here as well. There we go, look at that. You can see with Daniel Kerda there, with the red strip, horizontal strip on his jersey there, knowing when to freewheel into a corner to avoid that braking discipline. So, how are we getting on the pro side of today's race? Is Josh still holding such a fierce lead? It looks like, yes, he's 1 minute and 6 seconds ahead currently of Morten Feng. Morten Feng and Igor Kopse still cat and mouse here. They're very much pacing their efforts right now. And you can see Igor there. Certainly really putting some ferocity through those crank arms today. So we have just over 7 kilometers left. As an aside, who here is excited about Keirin? I know that I am. I love doing track training on virtual cycling platforms, velodrome training. I don't think I'd like to do it in person. Those angles off the walls, that's too much for me. But indoors, when you can, that helps you do pace training and helps you do work on cadence pace training in particular. I love doing that kind of thing. So I might actually consider competing in the Chase the Pace here on ZMS Esports Studio. But more importantly, on the virtual cycling platform Indy Velo. So that attack group, that breakaway group in the sportive side, still duking it out for that lead position. I think we're going to see these guys right the way through to the end, and I think this really proves that all 4 of them there are Rolliers, managing to really stick it to one another. We do have 3 teammates in there, so they're working together, but they are competing with the coalition contender that is Matthew Ladd. So we can see that Bjorn there is the main chase to this group here. He's about a minute behind. And it looks like they're duking it out between themselves, Ariala and Bjorn. And they're there with, oh, so complemented by teammate Daniela Strata, we have Ariala Verhaeren, and we have Bjorn as well. And to remind you who the Ionian team is, we have Daniela Estrata, Vicky Whitelaw, Ariala Verhaeren, Andrea Heinrich, Jamie Lee Wright, Debbie Wimblatt, Jennifer Mizak, and Berdine Driscoll. I sometimes have to remind myself of my Deutsch pronunciations, but that is a team that's certainly one to watch. We've seen Ariala climbing the ranks of the top 10, putting in some very phenomenal efforts here. And as I say every time, to be honest with you, there are no efforts to be sniffed at here today on course. Everyone is giving it their all. And that ultimately is all you can ever ask for. So on Thursday, we're going to have the big finisher of our 4-stage race series, Chase the Yellow here on Indy Velo, crossover circuit, which covers the entire island. And that's going to be the big one. That's going to be, I think I remember seeing 44.9 kilometers. And I believe it's relatively flat. So this one is going to be constant effort rather than aiding either the rolliers or the climbers or the sprinters. It's going to be more of an endurance course, because although flats are nicer because you don't have to hit your cardio efforts so hard and so fast like with a climb, well, you do have to supply constant effort to maintain speed and to get distance-based advantages. So that is the double-edged sword that is relative flat courses. So Josh Harris here, still just holding a phenomenal lead. There's a minute something ahead there of Igor. Rasmus Feldbard has kind of fallen off the back there, but we are currently following Carl Axel Zander Persen, who is in chase, trying to chase and catch up with Morten Feng and Igor Kopse. I'm beginning to believe that there's been a technical on either the connection with the smart trainer or internet connection or something with Carl Axel there, which is always sad to see. But again, there's always phenomenal efforts from Carl, and I'm sure he takes great national pride as a Swede in the fact that currently leading the Sportive League, the Sportive GC table, is fellow Swede Ludwig Karlberg. So Josh Harris on the lead there as he's making his way through this final and very fierce climb. And I believe we are finally seeing a breakup of that breakaway group on the Sportive side. So it looks like we just have Sven Drese and Daniel Kehrer here, teammates both from BHC. Victor Wilkin looks like he's struggling a little bit, keeping fairly good form with that cadence, but I think he's struggling to hold the same effort that he was holding earlier. And certainly I know that by now I would be cooked. So again, no effort to be sniffed at here. Matthew Ladd falling off a little bit behind, perhaps almost catching up with and closing that gap with Victor. But a pretty good power nonetheless for the climbs that we've seen, the climbs that have gone before, just how steep they've been from Victor here, managing to hold 250 watts. And we're here with Matthew Ladd breaking 350, so managing to find his maybe VO2 again right now. Certainly finding his legs again and finding what he can really surge out of those quads as he passes Victor Wilking. But this is where the tunnel vision comes in. Victor has seen Matthew Ladd pass and he suddenly found his gumption again, suddenly found his guile and is going to push that through the cranks to hold on to that rear wheel. Oh, Matthew Ladd. Josh Harris here looks like he's cresting the... Is he at the zenith already? I believe our arch here is denoting that he's at the zenith of the climb. This has been a phenomenal race from Josh from Rezio Racing. And fellow teammate Igor Kopse is in the lead chase position behind. So 3.9 kilometers to go. Yeah, he has indeed, because we can see in the far top right there, we can see that we're now on a minus gradient. So a descent. So Josh is just Superman today. He's Popeye. He's had his iron content from his spinach, and off he goes, freewheeling into this, knowing that he's got that lead and that he can really rust into this descent, collect his heart rate. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that after going great guns for so long. He's found his red kryptonite. And he's in his berserker mode. That's certainly where he's been today. How he's grounded himself in this race. There's another advantage to freewheeling through very steep descents like this. As you can see, Josh's avatar goes into an aero position in the drops. That means that you actually gain a little bit of speed advantage. It may come at a cost if you have somebody right with you gunning it and attacking a downhill, if they can get into a high enough tension gear without the chain being too slack, ergo without being spun out. And it looks like Sven Dresa has been the one. He's been the kingmaker. He has managed to push ahead of even fellow teammate Daniel Kera. He is, I can't remember the character's first name. He is McLeod in this one. There can be only one. My apologies to Scotland for that terrible accent. It was almost as offensive as Corudden all over again. So, on the pro side of the race, Josh is still holding strong as he begins to even out on his downhill, and they have now added a flamme rouge, a red flame in Indy Velo, and literally a red flame with those two flares that we just passed, and that denotes the final kilometer remaining, or when you have entered the final kilometer remaining. So Josh is almost in the clear at this point. I don't think that even teammate Igor Kopse will be able to catch him in a kilometer with a differential of 1 minute 23. I never call it until the finish line has been blessed with the rubber of those tires, but it's safe to say that this is Josh's day today. And we can see just on that horizon the inviting yellow arch ahead, which I'm sure Josh is seeing as a beacon through the darkness right now, ready to begin to take some rest after putting it all into the bike and leaving it all on the road today. Phenomenal work, Josh. Truly phenomenal race, and we have Igor here in that second place position, looking to really chase down that finish line and really put a really big impression for Rezio Racing in the top spots today. Oh, and interesting, it looks like I never noticed this before. Carl Axel has joined Brasio Racing for Chase the Yellow on Indy Velo. Earlier in the year, we saw him racing with RGT Sweden. So that's interesting to see that change of team. Fantastic stuff. So it looks like the top 5 today is going towards Brasio Racing in the pro side of the race. But again, I won't confirm before, I won't confirm too soon is what I mean to say. Really phenomenal to see Igor on the webcam finally today. Nice work, Igor. And again, getting to enjoy rolling to a stop and taking that rest. Morten Feng, who put in a phenomenal battle with Igor Kopse, just about to crest that finish line. There we go, look at that. How are we getting on in the sportive side of the race? So we're closing in on the final 2 kilometers. Sven Dreze is almost swapping turns on the front with teammate Daniel Kjær with BHC. They may even, it almost looks like they're actually using the descent and the draft benefit through the descent to slingshot each other forward, using the aerodynamic benefits of both the draft benefit and of getting that aero position from coasting or freewheeling. And we can see the Flamme Rouge coming up, again denoting where our final kilometer begins. So Matthew Ladd and Victor Wilkin, I think, found the limit of the lactic acid of their quads, maybe even their cardio efforts today. And it looks like our 2 Deutsches riders have managed to really push ahead here with BHC. Getting a finish line sprint maybe from Sven Dreze. Certainly if Sven can sprint for that long, that's very impressive. I think he's going for it. Phenomenal stuff. There's something in the water in Germany if they can do 800-meter sprints. Maybe easing up a little bit now that he's got that gap. Yeah, easing up a little bit as we see the power indicator, which is the brake light looking thing on the saddle post. Although, as I say that, punching up over 400 watts in a lower cadence, so in a very high tension gear, to achieve that, really pushing through the cranks, really getting that lactic acid firing. Phenomenal effort, Sven. Absolutely phenomenal. That was truly anybody's game, anybody's race when we had that 4-man strong breakaway group there. And it really was jockeying and jostling all the way between all 4 riders, and Sven was the one who just held that 5% extra back that he needed. And I don't know how he did it, because that was just the tiniest bit to hold back, that he really pushed through those crank arms, really fired through that chain and really propelled him over that finish line. Fantastic stuff. Daniel Kjær coming in second there. Matthew Ladd, who put in a phenomenal effort in really pushing that breakaway group ahead, coming in for 3rd place here. I honestly thought Matthew Ladd was going to take that at certain points, but Sven just had some secret sauce today. He had a dab of the hot sauce and he was gone. I'm sure left impressions of the virtual rubber, of the virtual tyres on the virtual tarmac today. Oh, we've got a bit of a webcam issue with Carl there, but putting in A nice fierce effort to help round out the top 5 for Razio Racing today. Certainly Razio Racing have certainly had some elixir as water today as well. That has really fired them along. Victor Wilkin, again, phenomenal effort, Victor. The final climb is the one that can sometimes be the final nail in the coffin, and sadly that may have been the case today, but phenomenal effort in holding that breakaway group for so long. We saw 4 Rolliers go head to head on the sportive side of the race, and it was a fierce battle. Again, if you're sensing that I'm very impressed by that, we saw phenomenal effort between those 4 riders competing with one another, as we have with this small main chase group here with Ariella Verheeren, Daniela Estrada and Bjorn Ozenbrink. And here we go, Ariella was holding something back, going for that finish line sprint. Again, there's something in the water in Central Europe if they can go for over 300 meters on a real powered sprint like this. I'm very impressed again. But Ariella, look at this sprint. What are those power and speed numbers? Just quickly, if we can see that. Bjorn coming in just after Ariella there, and followed by Ionian teammate Daniela Estrada. So we've got Rob Housel. The climbs maybe a little bit of a sting for Rob today with the Level Velo team, but currently in the second place position in the the Sportive GC table. And if you want to see the results from today and the cumulative results from stages 1 through 3, well, you're going to have to join us on September 7th at the same time, right here on ZMS Esports Studio. And you can watch us by searching ZMS Esports Studio on Facebook and following the page so that you get the announcement of when we go live. You can follow us on Facebook by searching and finding us on YouTube by searching ZMS Live Stream. Or you can download the ESTV app on any smart device and searching for either ZMS Esports Studio, Chase the Yellow, or Indie Velo. Nice pacing here from Rob. He's in a bit of a chasse patate position, a potato chase or no man's land position right now. But that means that he is getting to enjoy not being contended with from riders from behind as he crests towards and just about to roll over the finish line. And Tony Lake, who we saw do a fierce chase effort earlier, just about to also crest said finish line. Again, there's no such thing as a stale effort here on course today. Everyone has put everything they have through the crank arms into the bike and left everything on the road. And I cannot tell you how good that feels if you're not used to racing, either virtual or outdoors, how good that feels when you get to the finish line, regardless of what your position has been, regardless of how well you performed, and just feeling the effort of what you've done today. How good it feels knowing that you've just managed to put that out there, leave it out there. That nothing of your emotional makeup as a human being held you back, that you pushed through all of it. It feels fantastic, and that's one of the best things I think for training up your mental fortitude for physical activity. I'm sure runners can also attest the same thing, which is my way of saying, if you want to try this out, and you've not done it before, but you want to try it out, do. The worst that you will do is experience cycling. Andrew Simmons there passing the finish line, followed by Michael Frati and Kai Retzel. Kai Retzel auf Wattfabrik. So Wattfabrik, the Central European team, are Andrei Patala, Jan Ola Karding, Kai Retzel. We've got, oh sorry, just waiting for my widgets to disappear here. Ralf Berg, we've got Reinhold Berkey, Tobias Ostermann, and Carmen Krebs. Rasmus Feldbad on the pro side of the race. Great effort, Rasmus. You're not out for the count yet, I know that, Rasmus. I'm sure you'll show us that Viking ferocity of the Danes as we come into stage 4. Julian Fusel here in those wonderful Deutsche colours. I noticed that even with the yellow helmet and the red bike with the black of the kit there, that also then recreates the German flag colours. Great stuff. Kester Dobson. Alright, so for the pro side of the race, our top 5 is Josh Harris, who put in that phenomenal effort with that huge breakaway that he pushed from the first quarter, the end of the first quarter of the entire race, the entire course, with 42 minutes and 5 seconds. So with a differential of 1 minute and 29 seconds behind Josh is Igor Kopsev of Slovenia. Then we have from Norway, Morten Fang, with a differential behind Josh of 1 minute and 52 seconds. So that's 32 seconds behind Igor. And 6 minute 10 seconds behind Josh is Sweden's Carl Axel Zander Persson. And in that 5th place position, 11 minutes and 41 seconds behind Josh, Rasmus Feldbard of Denmark. And for the Sportive, Sven Teresa with that phenomenal, very long sprint that we saw there right at the end. 46 minutes and 11 seconds for BHC. But keeping BHC, rounding out the top 2 is Daniel Kera, 21 seconds behind Sven Teresa. And I didn't realize that Matthew Ladd is a fellow Canadian, getting us onto the podium, getting us Canucks right up there with 1 minute behind, exactly 1 minute, well, 900th of a second as well, behind Sven Teresa, my apologies. Victor Wilking, from Germany, so Victor Wilking, 2 minutes and 11 seconds behind, rounded out the top 4, but rounded out the top 5 is Ariella Verhaarden with Aeonian. That's 2 minutes 54 seconds behind Sven Teresa. Phenomenal effort, another phenomenal finish line sprint from Ariella. Fantastic stuff. And we will be back on Thursday with the crossover circuit, and this is going to be the big one that covers the entire island, also cutting through the center. And it's going to be a long one, and a toughie. 44.3 kilometer total with a cumulative elevation gain total of 331 meters. So you're not going to want to miss that one. This is the one that will define the champions. And with that said, it's been an absolute pleasure to bring this race to you today alongside Damon from ZMS Esports Studio. My name has been Mark. You've been a wonderful audience. Now please have a wonderful day.